In this fourth episode of Project Springtime, I wanted to cover the different roles and the different, what we're going to call captains, that you need to facilitate your Eucharistic conference. So many different things go into it, and it's honestly like a theater performance if you have any experience with, putting on a musical or something. There's so many different moving pieces. And I think that's really what makes it exciting and really cool. And your audience, the people that come to your Eucharistic conference, I think that's one of the things they notice most is seeing everyone coordinated, and it's really something to get excited about. So where to start? Well, there are many things that happen prior to the day of your Eucharistic conference, and so maybe we can start there. One of the things that we'd offer to people, and I'd recommend this, is an email, just a way to connect with your audience. And this is something that you can grow, collecting emails. But leading up to your event, and this is just an option, mind you, but offering, like, let's say a novena, so 9 consecutive days leading up to your event of spiritual content. And that can include different things like maybe digging into the daily readings, or just really digging into your charism. So that spiritual focus and all of its different components. Or it can really dig into maybe the theme or the talk that's going to be given that particular month. So we've used Flocknote and MailChimp for these different email campaigns, is what we've called them. And the strengths of using those particular platforms is that when you send an email, the recipient doesn't have access to, let's say, 100 different email addresses. And so they can't just hit reply all, which really becomes a pain. That's definitely important. And then also from a liability perspective, it gives recipients the ability to unsubscribe, which is actually very important. So apart from those general things, you can actually make the emails look very, very, very nice with different content, whether it's just text, pictures, videos, or links, buttons, and all of this kind of stuff. If people want to reply, actually they can do so. But then who gets that reply is not everyone, not all of the recipients, but you, or the person who's in charge of these emails. So I think that's definitely a strength of it. So maybe at the end of your Eucharistic conference, when all is said and done, you can have a sign-up sheet where people can put down their name and email, or actually what can be created, and this is more of a digital perspective, is a sign-up form. And this sign-up form can be shared across even different social platforms, like Facebook or whatever you might be using. So these are all different strengths in a way just to communicate with your audience in addition to that in-person experience. And that can be really, really fruitful. So that's the email. Advertising. So advertising, if you're going to be doing something straight to Facebook, maybe only 3 days prior to your event is a good timeline. So especially to hit that young adult audience, their retention span isn't going to be all that great for maybe a week or two out. But directly prior to, they might be like, oh, well, that particular Saturday, 2 days from now, I got nothing going on, so let's go. And that's often what we find to be the case. And so just including very basic information, the date, time, maybe the name of the speaker, and just barely what this Eucharistic conference is. But then include a nice picture. So graphics, if you can, maybe we'll talk about that really quickly. So have a square version of your poster, your Eucharistic conference poster. That can be shared on things like Instagram, Facebook. Then a little banner, which would be used for your emails. And obviously your poster, which would be posted in the church or whatever your venue is, and then outside source bulletin boards. So I think if you're able to get those 3 types of graphics for your conference, then you're golden. What else happens prior to? Well, there are planning meetings. So if And this would be you, presumably, as conference leader. So booking different speakers and lining them up. So because, well, who are the people we're asking to give these talks? Well, these could be people in your parish community, leaders of different ministries. And for those types of people, it's a really great opportunity just to give them a little bit of a platform to reach an audience that's not their particular audience per se. So to be able to draw people in. But then also to really share their story. So not entirely to share just about their ministry. So it gives them an opportunity to talk either about your theme or really their own personal witness of why, or why are they Catholic, or when did they encounter Christ? Really to see their personal faith is maybe not an opportunity that they have all that often. And so that's something that this is just, that's what we're looking for in this particular venue, is we're really trying to hit home that encounter with Christ and be able to see that in different people in different ways is awesome. So it could be your ministry members from your parish. It could be even broader. So maybe people within your diocese who are maybe leaders in works of mercy types of things. So like maybe the soup kitchen or the place that are helping all the different migrants, or all these different, you can be drawing from all these different people in different capacities. Clergy are awesome. Now, and we've had some phenomenal talks given by clergy. Now, the thing is, you have to be careful for them not to speak too long often, because they're very good at it. But one of the cool things about this Eucharistic conference is that it gives a platform for lay people to be able to, talk. But, and so that's definitely a strength of this Eucharistic conference. But then what becomes important is just your guidance as far as exactly what they're talking about. So you're trying to really have them strengthen their experience of your charism and a deepening of faith. And regardless of who's speaking, you want to be able to make the faith relatable in a way that's not their typical experience. So you could be drawing from things from culture, you could be drawing from, all different, you can even bring like movies and stuff into it, what's the latest fad, but then really just bring it home into, a talk. Well, lots of different things are possible, don't want to overkill that one. But when you're booking these different speakers, you can be planning a whole year in advance. Just go through January, March, September, December, and you can really be booking these. And oftentimes, depending on who you're asking, you very well might need that much of a heads up in order to actually get them to come. Now, a young adult, if you're drawing from someone from your local community, they might be able to fill in, some of those holes in your schedule on a much near proximity type of basis, in a time that's much near to where you are. Anyway, so that's 2 cents on speakers. Try to keep things punctual, not more than 15 minutes. Otherwise, you start to lose people. So you really want to hit them hard and hit them quick. Other things that you're planning is a presider, so someone who's going to facilitate adoration, benediction, exposition, all this type of stuff. Now, priests and deacons are both able to facilitate adoration and give blessings. So, and also to carry the Eucharist. So, in our Eucharistic conference, part of that very impactful experience that we're offering to people is that Eucharistic procession, where the monstrance is being carried and brought to the people per se through the aisles. So that's not something any lay person can do. Again, Priests and deacons are both able to do that, and then to give a blessing at the end. Now, if you are limited to a lay person, maybe you're not able to find a priest, let's say, you're still able to do exposition, but only simply to place the Eucharist on the altar. And then, but it's more of a static experience. But if that's where you're at, then we do what we can do. We've never had that lack of a presider and a priest so far in our time. So that's all important. So those are things you'll need to plan in advance. What else is there? Well, music is often prepared beforehand and practices held. So maybe we can talk about that really quickly. So if you can ask that, well, I guess for our conference, I already have the music picked out for the whole rest of the year. Now, that wasn't always the case. Oftentimes it was done a week or two prior to. What is important is that the songs is how the songs are chosen. So what we offer is a song before the rosary, then a song to begin the event. And the next time we hear music is with exposition, so the typical Latin or English, O Salutaris, O Saving Victim. And then the next time is after a brief moment of 5 minutes of silence, praise and worship, so a contemporary song, and then 4 more songs after that. So that first song directly after the silence, once that's done, it kind of provides a cue for the presider and the altar servers to begin the Eucharistic procession. And then from there, about 4 songs has usually been an appropriate length of time. Now, with those 4 songs, or 5 songs for adoration, you really want them to flow. And so if you're able to do things like put your different songs in keys that transition well, focusing on things like that is really important. And the type of music that we've offered has always been, I guess you could call it praise and worship, contemporary Christian, or Steubenville, whatever floats your boat, all kind of meaning the same thing. But something which really highlights, again, that presence of Christ, so something that's Christocentric or really focusing on that relational aspect, so making it personal for people. A prayer, talking about God's love or just a song of praise, things like that. So I think that's all I've got for music, besides the fact that I've also started to use Flocknote, even just in providing the sheet music to my members. So that's a great way, and then if they have questions, they simply reply. I get the question. I also include not just music ministry members, but then also the Eucharistic conference leader, and then some others whom it would also be beneficial to have that information in the lineup of the music. One last thing for music is you might need to get the lineup of songs and information to anyone who's preparing either worship aids or slide presentations. So really quickly with worship aids. So your church or venue might not have screens to be able to project lyrics, in which case you could provide paper. So you could do it double-sided, and you can include basic information like, okay, who's the speaker going to be, lyrics of the songs. The only thing you need to be attentive to is having the copyright licenses to do so. Most of your music, I would imagine, will be covered under CCLI.com, which is an organization which provides publishing rights to be able to reprint lyrics of songs. And then another one, depending on the type of music you're doing, is one license. And that covers your typical breaking bread and all of that. Now, that's not exactly the genre that we use. It's not our primary resource, but Oftentimes our two opening songs will be something like Hail Mary, Gentle Woman, or John Michael Talbot's Holy is His Name. Things like that are beautiful songs to include and not so much covered under CCLI as one license. So those are those thoughts on the worship aid. So you can include the songs, you can include the different prayers that are prayed throughout the course of your Eucharistic conference, as well as the prayers of benediction, so the divine praises, some of the different calls and responses from the presider, and then include any unique prayers that are particular to your charism, your spiritual focus. If you have some of those prayers and are actually able to run that into the flow of your event, ooh, so good, so good. So those are the thoughts on that. Now, slides, for whoever is creating your slides, they might be using something as simple as PowerPoint. I would say that Google Slides is a lot nicer to use, if only just because of practicality. So like you could work on it, create it, the presentation, on one computer, and then have access to it from wherever, as long as there's an internet connection, and actually display it. Any changes that are made on the cloud, and so the changes are available everywhere, as opposed to having to upload or continually update files, which can be a little bit of a hassle and nightmare. If you use Google Slides, you're able to connect it even to the calendar, which, well, anyway, these aren't necessities, but they're nice. Now, if you really wanted to take it a level up, you could do something like Propresenter. So Propresenter was something that was new coming into the job for me, and making the slides for it is kind of beyond me too, but we have people to do it. Propresenter 7 is, at least at this moment, from the time of this recording, the most current version. It does have its own cloud, so like you can create files, put them on the cloud, and then it's also available on whatever machine you're using to display. The advantage of Propresenter over any other type of slide presentation software is that you can include moving backgrounds. Ooh, boy, that's when it gets cool. Now, just something to keep in mind when you're including these moving backgrounds, to keep them to make them unobstructive, so that people can continue to focus. And so that can be done in various ways, whether just through having a very slow-moving type of background, or blur the whole thing out so that whatever is displayed will actually show well. And then maybe it can be like a continuous loop as opposed to chopping every single time that it restarts. So those are just some different things to keep in mind. And there are different website resources that you can subscribe to where you can then download all different types of backgrounds. And so those are great things to look into. Formatting lyrics and stuff is something that you might have to build an entire library from scratch, which can be the most daunting part of the whole process, is just getting the first one done. But once you start to build a library and database of songs, you can actually start to just pull things up and then plug and play. Now for this, you also want to include the copyright information. So again, putting your CCLI or one license number in there. Now, if you end up live streaming your Eucharistic conference, that's going to become especially important, because when your stuff is on the web for all to see, there's liability in that, and so you have to do it right. Anyway, those are the thoughts on that. If you want to learn more about copyright and stuff, you could probably hit, I can't remember which side. It's either going to be this side, right there, or it's going to be right over there. You can learn more about it. All right, so this is all stuff that's happening prior to. Next, we're going to talk about, from an audience perspective, what is the first thing that you are going to experience? And I think that'll give us a way to organize the following roles. So if you are a participant, what is the first thing you're going to experience when walking into church or whatever the venue is? Well, hopefully it's people greeting you. So these are your greeters, and they can have a couple different jobs. So maybe in the beginning it's just as simple as welcoming and then directing and then showing where the restrooms are if they need it. Maybe there's some other things you want them to do off the bat, but the next time we're really going to see them is at the end. So maybe they're going to be distributing the apparel, getting signups, email signups for your campaign, and then also, well, I think that just about covers it. We also had these little cards for our Eucharistic conference, which on the front of them had our logo, and then on the back of them had our specific prayer, which was kind of particular or peculiar to our conference and charism. So those are all different handouts that they can be giving as people are walking in or walking out. Then the next thing that people are going to see is probably, or hear, is the music. If there's a song that's done off the bat, even before the rosary, maybe that's one song, so they can take a seat. Then they'll have the opportunity to pray along with those leading the rosary, if that's something you're going to offer. So it's been really, really awesome just to have the rosary prayed and get people in a spirit of prayer and kind of a spirit of peace before the event even starts. And to facilitate the rosary, we've had two awesome young people lead. And two is nice because then you have the call and response covered rather than using up your voice or just a single person doing all the talking themselves. Either that, or you can have 5 individuals who lead a decade of the rosary. All of these are different ways to do the same thing. Then after another song is played, then the MC comes up. So this is presumably you again as Eucharistic Conference leader. So you're helping to guide the people through this experience. First, through this introduction, this is the first time you would actually come up. And off the bat, you're just giving some basic information, maybe of what Eucharistic Conference means, who's going to be coming up to give the talk, and then go directly into your theme. So what is your monthly theme? So it might be a particular gospel passage or some sort of reflection you're pulling from. It could be a word, phrase, paragraph, any of the above. In our case, the one we had a whole year that was focused on the fruits, the virtues and fruits. Then this year we're focusing on saints. So whatever your theme might be, just to really start digging into that. Directly afterwards, then the MC continues to introduce the speaker. And one of the things I just wanted to be attentive to in this particular role is, and this is more of a general thing, don't feel like you have to explain every single thing that's going to be happening over the course of this Eucharistic Conference. And this limited time of hopefully an hour and a half is a good amount of time, more or less. Because that can become very monotonous and wordy, which is not something that we want people to experience. If anything, as much as is possible, let what's going on speak for themselves. So whether it's that experience of adoration, let them experience that silence, let them experience that music. So it might be, though those experiences might be new for many people, your primary function is just to simply guide and direct the flow of that whole process. So the less that's said, the better. Then after introducing your speaker, and then after they speak for 15 minutes, you'll have the chance to thank them and maybe round out their thoughts, bring it back into whatever that theme for the day was, and then very simply begin to introduce adoration and that second portion of our Eucharistic Conference. So the first portion was more intellectual, and then the second part is more of the heart. So everything kind of works, it's a balanced approach, and so we're just guiding people through that experience. And so that's when music ministry can begin to maybe play some background music leading up and into that first song that people are going to hear, which is O Salutaris, O Saving Victim. I think we already mentioned that. Let's see. Then I guess the next thing that happens is the presider comes out along with the two altar servers. So maybe we'll talk about the altar servers. So facilitating adoration is pretty different than serving Mass. So there's a different set of skills that are necessary. I think if you talk to any priest or most priests, they'll be happy to train altar servers, especially if they're excited and willing to be trained and then to continue serving with reverence. I think any priest would be excited for that opportunity. So there's a certain set of skills that altar server needs. How to hold the thurible, so the incenser, how to hold the boat, and then when it's, well, let's start from the beginning. So they all go to the tabernacle together, or maybe they begin straight off with a procession holding the Eucharist, maybe bringing it from a Eucharistic Adoration Chapel. So however that procession takes place, it takes place. And then afterwards, the Eucharist is placed on the altar, and then the presider and altar servers kneel before the altar and the Eucharist, and then the priest leads a prayer or two, call and response, and then the altar servers have to be prepared to, help the priest with the incense. So put incense in there and then reverence the Eucharist. Then 5 minutes of silence, and this is important. So on the one hand, if you might have some people that absolutely love the silence and would like to see more of it, but we're limiting it to about 5 minutes. Because if people really want that experience of prayer, they can go to an adoration chapel for an hour and just experience silence. That being said, having even just a very short amount of time can be very impactful for people, just to allow that presence of Christ to speak in and of itself without music, no nothing. But everyone is kneeling together in community together, adoring our Lord. Ooh, super powerful. Very, very good. After that, what's going to happen is maybe a first song. During that time of silence, even giving the priest the opportunity to have his or her own, I don't want to say reflection, but just a vocal prayer, I would say. Just recognizing the presence of the Lord in front. Just giving, it can be really cool to give the priest or deacon that opportunity. And then after that, go into that first song, kneeling before the presence of Christ. Eucharistic procession hasn't begun. But then with that second through, fifth song, that's when the Eucharistic procession takes place. Now, for altar servers, it's one way you can do it, which is really cool, is you have the one altar server walk backwards in front of the Eucharist, reverencing the Eucharist and the monstrance, and then the other altar server holds the shoulder and guides that other altar server who is walking backwards, just through the aisles and whatever. That's really awesome. It's one way to do it. Now, we've also had issues of people allergic to incense, unfortunately. I could breathe the stuff all day and just love it, but that's not the case for everyone. If you're having participants that are having a hard time with incense, maybe you can figure out exactly what they're allergic to. Maybe it's a pine type of incense. If it's just incense in general, well then maybe just use a charcoal thurible so there isn't really anything coming out. Or just outright just bring candles and limit very little incense to the beginning and the end of adoration. So all different things to keep in mind. And then at the end, the altar servers would facilitate benediction for the presider. And that just includes the added element of having the humeral veil ready, which is this longer piece of cloth that wraps around the shoulders of the priest. And that happens right prior to blessing. So I think from the altar server's perspective, that's all you really need to be prepared to to do. I mean, if you have one altar server that knows what to do, then they can train the next person. Like if there's another younger person that wants to serve as well, or these could be young adults. And if you have one person who knows what they're doing, then the presider doesn't need to retrain every single time. But whatever the case is, well, that's what we're going to deal with. Other than that, one thing that we offer as really adding to that impactful experience is a spotlight. And so the spotlight that we've been using looks like a Canon on a tripod. And so you're able to move this thing around and then follow the Eucharist as they process through the aisles. And that really helps. Like if you're using incense, then all of a sudden, like that beam of light just like shows through that incense. And incense has this symbolism of our prayers rising up to God. And so it just helps to highlight all these different spiritual themes. It doesn't have to be the big theater performance version of a spotlight. It could even be as simple as a special, just a light bulb that actually has a directional beam. And I've seen that done and be equally effective. But it was for a different space. So depending on whether you're doing it in a church or in a gym, different things can work well. Another role is lights and environment. So kind of dressing up the altar. Putting a whole bunch of flickering candles in front of the altar is really, really cool. Maybe having a statue of Mary or whatever, or a picture with something that represents your charism somewhere off to the side or in front can be really cool. But then also dimming the church lights so not everything is lit. So it's kind of so it's different than what people are used to coming into, let's say, a weekend mass. We're trying to really create something that's unique, something that's just a different experience. Dimming the lights is one aspect of it, and that's the only aspect I can think of. Another thing that's important is, cameras. I've always seen it as, so when we first started, at least the One Eucharistic Conference Fiat, I really wanted everything to be recorded and then made available on the internet. The thought being that, especially for the newer generation, if you don't exist on the internet, well then you really don't exist at all. And so for the first about 4 conferences or so, it took a lot of time recording the event on different cameras and then also recording what was shown on the screens all at different times and then post-processing all of that together. And what really made that take long was dealing with such a long video, about 2 hours or so. By the time you're rendering and get to about 99%, it happened about 5 out of 6 times, it doesn't get past 99% and it would just stop and then you had to try it all over again. Well, that's where the advantage of live streaming really comes in, is that you don't have to worry about syncing everything since everything is in real time. And then after you're done with your event, it's already processed and it's already up there. And so it ends up being this incredible time saver. So maybe your parish already has this available, live streaming. And if you're able to get yourself trained with that system, that would be awesome. Audio can also be, a concern. So like syncing your audio if you are having to post-process your event. But if you're in your church live streaming system, well then hopefully the audio is already going to be synced up too. So those are all things to keep in mind. Now, the great thing is that your event would be recorded, available. And I always thought that, this is just kind of a personal thing, but like for the speaker, for instance, with their talk, they put so much time and preparation into what they're speaking, but then if it's not recorded and then made available, well then it's just kind of gone forever. And so with that type of scenario, you're constantly replacing and replacing and replacing rather than building and building and building on top of what you've done and offering more. So that's kind of the mentality, is growing an event and then reaching an audience not just in real time, but then also for people to look back and see what had been done already is really a really cool experience. Well, can be an asset to your Eucharistic conference. So it's up to you what is possible. Now, obviously, with the advent of phones and all of that, you can really easily just like live stream off the bat. If you're going to do that, just live stream to Facebook or to YouTube from your phone. For YouTube, you need at least 1,000 subscribers, first of all. But then for Facebook, you should be able to just do it straight from your phone. Just try to get the best audio you can. Maybe it means using your lightning cable and then attaching actually like a really nice microphone to it. But then also having a smooth video. So maybe it's putting your phone on a tripod or having one of those little gimbals, which is just a stabilizer. And so you can move it all around. And if you do that, then you can actually track the Eucharist as the procession takes place. A whole bunch of different things are possible. So that's video. What else do people experience? I guess the reception. So at the end and closing of your event, your MC can kind of go up and just in a short amount of time, just let people know that your Eucharistic conference is done, and if they want to leave, they can, or if they want to stay and pray quietly, they may. Or if you have different offerings, maybe a prayer ministry, confessions if the priests are available, and then a reception just to guide people and show and let people know where those are. Then that can take place. And I guess how extravagant your reception is entirely up to you. But really, we're just providing an opportunity for a social gathering. So even if you end up providing snacks and stuff, well, that's okay. At the end is also a good time to make your apparel available. So how you want to guide that, I guess that brings up another aspect. So in your pre-planning meeting, whether it's the day of or maybe a week before or whenever you do it, but you have some of your captains present, that's something that is talked about from month to month. How can we make this flow better? What details do we need to be attentive to next time? What can we make better? What worked? What didn't work? And that's kind of part of the excitement of it. As you continue your Eucharistic conference, so when you first start, you might find that you need a lot of hands on deck. But then as you continue, maybe a few months down the road, some of those roles which weren't at first necessary, or which were at first necessary, might all of a sudden not become necessary. And so maybe in mentality, first off, maybe providing name tags for the different roles without people-specific names is possible. And the advantage of that is having a captain personally responsible for a role, and then if they're not able to make a particular month, also responsible for finding a substitute. So the more as Eucharistic conference leader, you can get the event to run independently of yourself. Often, I've heard it said before that a mark of a good leader is that they're able to step back entirely and the thing still runs. Whatever it is they're in charge of still runs by itself. So that's really what we're trying to facilitate. But then as far as some of those roles that might not be necessary anymore, be open to, I guess, things being changed, but then also maybe cycle, I think the word is cross-train. Cross-train your captains in different roles so that if things need to get bounced around or switched a little bit, then that's not so difficult. So different things to keep in mind. So I hope this was helpful, the different roles involved in facilitating a Eucharistic conference. Yeah, so I tried my best in this 4th episode. There's a lot of ground to cover, and I'm sure there was a lot that wasn't covered. Some things that I would have loved to see in the Eucharistic conferences that that we've hosted here but never really got a chance to get into was, let's say if you had a different venue like a stage or a gym or something, to get into like DMX lighting where you're actually dealing with beams of light. So on these, what do you call them? Gobos. So like where during adoration you can all of a sudden like focus in that light. That's a whole different world that I would have loved to get into. From an audio perspective, maybe there are different speakers or subwoofers that you could use to help bolster your event and some of that lower end. Or maybe just integrating into the parish and the different speakers that are used there, or just using whatever resources are available to you. That really helps if you have that type of mindset going into it, just using what's already available. Well, then you're on your road to success as far as longevity. So all different things to keep in mind. So thank you for listening to this 4th episode of Project Springtime. Don't forget to subscribe to this YouTube channel, and look forward to that 5th episode coming out.